Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You can, because I have nothing to say.
Oh, you have nothing to start with?
No.
Okay, so I got this. It's not funny. I know you like funny stuff, but
Okay.
I got nothing funny. Very impressed. You know how the last few times when we talk about whether or not kids can handle the information, you know how I'll always say, like, I don't know if it's too much or I'm expecting too much or
Are
whatever.
you talking here?
Yeah, like when we're talking about information we're giving to kids,
Yeah.
like whether or not they can actually digest the information, whether or not they know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Are we giving them too much? Like, you know how I say that sometimes?
Yeah,
I'll be
but
like,
give me one little tidbit.
like if I'm giving them, we're talking about, let's say, nutrition, and it's like, is it
Yep.
too complicated? Or training,
good.
is it too complicated? Or
Yeah.
is our expectation too high? Or when we're talking about, you know, being able to critically think and that kind of stuff, is it
Yeah.
too much? Are we expecting too much?
Yeah.
I got some. This is gonna kind of get right into our topic today, anyways. But so some of these kids that listen to our stuff are becoming members on the site now, and they're asking some good questions, man.
Oh, I like that.
Some good questions,
Okay.
and this is the kind of thing that's giving me hope, where it makes me hopeful, because it's like we're not drowning. It's not too much.
Yeah.
They're able to
Yeah.
understand what we're saying because they're
Yeah.
asking thoughtful questions. Question that we're gonna start with a question today from a kid that's from Norway, actually, which
Yeah.
is sick.
Yeah.
So we got a kid from Norway that wrote in. Really good question, and we're gonna get into that. And I got another kid that was writing in about asking about supplement stuff, and just like thoughtful.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to sort through it, saying like, I did some research on my own. I tried to figure out what
Great.
I should be having and whatever, and I want to get your thoughts on it. And this is something that I say all the last few episodes, at least, we've been talking about it. I always say, like, I don't know if the expectation is too high because I'm starting to forget what it was like to be a kid, and I don't know if it's maybe beyond what they're actually capable of at their age. But then I read, you know, emails and questions that people send in like that, and it's like, freaking right, man. Like, that's just showing me, like, the kids got it. They got it in there.
You know, they got it. And the thing is if you throw enough mud on the wall, some of it sticks.
Right.
I've seen it with kids I've trained, seen it with my son, seen it with his friends. They're not going to get everything, but if they hear something, it's got to pique their interest,
Right.
And if they're interested enough, it's going to stick. And they hear it a few times, it's kind of sort of makes sense. And it is surprising because remember little things that, you know, Dalton Prout would speak to Charlie quite a bit, and you know he was explaining. I think Zach was there at that time, but Dalton puts it into really good perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
About coaching. He was like, what you always want to remember, Charlie, is that you'd never ever take the tone out of someone's voice, like as a coach. So if a coach seems angry, you know, don't take the tone, just listen to the message, right? If he tells you to skate hard in a nice way or tells you to skate hard in a really mean way, all he's saying is to skate hard. And I remember Charlie doing an interview, and he'd been asked that several times about what kind of coach would you like to play for? You like someone hard on you, or do you like someone that's, you know, likes to teach and explain? And he goes, well, and he used those words that I've learned to not take the tone. I've learned to take the message. Or little things like Dalton, things that, you know, you think they were insignificant. And he told them to have a good career, always be good to the trainers and your staff that's not playing and coaching. They may not seem like they're the most important, or maybe not. You're not under their thumb, like they're not your authority necessarily, but be good to them, because that's what makes everything click as a team. They're important to you, right? And that's another thing in an interview. He said that I think it was the Erie Otters were asking him about one of the best things that you've learned from Dalton, and he said, "Be good to your trainers," and they really like that, right? Like, but and then it was fitness and it was food, and it's like little pieces, and you're not going to learn everything all in one day. But yeah, the kids do learn, man. They do, and I've seen that with hockey. Like, remember, coach, you said this. Yep, I remember that. Good. I'm glad that you heard that. Like, it's impressive. I had a parent last night. Kids just made incredible gains since August. Incredible. Like, really nice kid. Like to teach him, but real quiet. And his dad came in after and said, I gotta thank you. Like, he's done so much, but he always says, Coach Andy says this, Coach Andy says this, and he's dialed right in. And there's a quiet kid that where you think, I'm not sure if he's listening, but I'm not sure if he gets it because they don't respond. But then he applies everything and he practices some types of shooting that I teach him. Like, it sticks.
Yeah.
And for sure, it can get complicated when you're teaching or when you're expressing it. You think, maybe it's a little bit much, but the kids that want it,
Yeah.
and they're going to try. And we've seen it with our 05 group. A lot of the kids that work out with you, like they're it's good.
Yeah, man.
They're dialed in, man.
It's super. It's really promising, and it makes me feel good about what we're doing because I feel like we're starting to. It's early on, obviously still for us, but we're starting to tap into something. Like there's something going on with the kids, and it makes me feel really good to do what we're doing because some of these questions I'm reading, it's like, man, you actually thought about this question.
Yeah.
You actually tried to do some research and figure it out, and you're asking me a specific thing that will help you.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just awesome, man. So
Yeah.
especially for you guys that are listening, like, especially now, because the volume that we're getting in is still manageable, like we will answer your questions. So if you come on and you send us some questions, we'll actually answer you.
Yeah.
And you can take real advantage of that when the volume is still somewhat manageable for us right now. You know,
Yeah.
so if that's something that you're interested in doing, go to the website. Where before we were just taking all the questions we can, but we can't take all of them now. So for the kids that are members, it's starting to turn into a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's like a personal coaching type thing, but it's almost kind of like personal coaching. Like people are just typing in their questions. You and I will talk about it, or I'll give them an answer if it's something that I can handle on my own. And it's just, it's really helpful. And I'm really happy to see that it's working out for some of these guys because it's something I wasn't really sure of, you know?
Yeah.
And
and that's we do try to make it so that if you're a coach listening, if you're a parent listening, if you're a player, hopefully it can hit all three so that when you might hear it from us. And then if a parent hears maybe an answer or a suggestion, they can maybe apply it. Or if a coach applies it, then, they're getting it in multiple different ways.
Yeah. And another thing I was just thinking while you were talking there, this was another Jordan Peterson thing. He was talking about when kids are learning language, which I'm fascinated by. Kids, when they are starting to learn how to speak English, it's amazing that they can just figure out the rules of language without any. Yeah. So he was talking about how, as parents, when you're first speaking to your kids and they're starting to learn the language, you're always speaking a little bit above what they can understand. And this is to your point of, you just throw them out at the wall and some stuff starts to stick.
Yeah.
And that's how kids learn language, actually. You're talking a little bit above what they can understand, and they start to take pieces, and then you start to talk a little bit in a little bit more complex way, and they take more pieces, and then all of a sudden they know the rules of the language without ever having learned them.
Yeah.
No one ever said, this is how you use past tense, present tense. Yeah. And it's the same thing with this nutrition stuff. Charlie called me a couple weeks ago last week asking about some nutrition stuff because he's starting to put some size on. And he was telling me, like, because he doesn't understand the concepts exactly how they work yet, but he has an idea to ask a good question. So he called me and he was like, hey, like I put on a couple pounds, and I just want to make sure it's not a bad thing because, like, I'm still eating in a calorie deficit, but I'm putting on, and that's the way that he phrased it. And I'm like, well, you can't be in a calorie deficit if you're putting weight on, bud. So like, but he's got some base to speak from when he's asking questions now too, right? So it's just, it's awesome. It's an awesome thing, man. So I wanted to lead with that because I'm really impressed, and it's going to get into probably our first question here that somebody wrote in from Norway, which is crazy. He found us from Norway.
We have people from all over, man.
I know, it's cool.
It's amazing how many people are out there that I have no idea. Like, I'm starting to get those blank stares.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you from somewhere.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
So over to you.
Yeah, well, the question was, I might butcher the question, and so I just shortened it.
Okay.
But so this person from Norway plays hockey, and he said he doesn't come from a hockey family, and he wants to become better, but he doesn't know who to turn to. Like, he's got his coach, obviously, and different things. But when I watch a hockey game, how do I know? And that's a really good question, because how do I know, and what do I look for to get better? Yeah, it's a really good question, because, like, if you're just watching a hockey game, then it tends to lean into watching it like a fan. Like, it's easy to do. Like, I'll do that I'll do that at a lot of the times. Like, you watch the game as a fan, and you're going, oh, that was a nice play, that was a nice hit, or go whoever go. So you're watching as a fan, so you're not necessarily learning anything. You don't necessarily see patterns. You don't really see the game within the game. And why someone is effective, or maybe someone that's not standing, like isn't a superstar. Why is he on the ice so much, or why, why? Okay, so that's that. So one way when I was thinking about that question is, if you watch a game as a fan, you don't learn, but if you look, so what does a scout do? Because that's a very easy thing to do too. Like if you think about what a scout does, they go to a game and they're watching two teams and they're looking for some players, right? So like if you're scouting, if you're an OHL team or a college team scouting, like, I mean, there's so many people out there. Like, how do you find the top 50? Like that's a tough task. Or if you're an NHL scout looking at in junior, well, now there's only one age that is draft eligible. Well, not really. There's two ages, but let's say mainly this year, the 04 age group is the bulk of the draft. You get some 03s and an 02 here and there. So how do you, like, so you go to a game and like, how do you do this? Right. So you have to do something to trim the fat and see something, right? Or else you just be confused and you just be watching it like a fan. So a couple of scouts that I've talked to have some strategies, because I was very interested. Like, and Dalton was one, because he's Dalton Prout is a pro scout for Florida now. So I said, how are you doing this? And TV now, like when COVID was hitting, like, how do you do this? And he goes, well, a lot of times you don't watch a whole game. Sometimes you might take shifts of certain amount of players, or you might just watch a period just to see some tendencies. Sometimes you might go to a game. I was talking to one scout and he said, you might just go and watch a position, or you might only watch 5 players or 2 players, and stuff like that. So that what happens is you're not totally just watching every second of the game. You're just looking for, like, maybe you're just watching one team or whatever. So you're watching and studying that team. So what that does is it trims it down so that you can actually make an analysis.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So this helps them shrink the game down a little bit. So you can kind of do that as a player as well. So if you're watching it as a fan, you're just going to be kind of confused, right? You're going to see a guy with the puck, but you're not watching. Maybe if you're a right winger and you want to learn how to play like a right winger, if you're watching the TV's not on them or whatever, you could get mesmerized by everything else that's going on. So the first thing that I would do is try to shrink a game when you're watching it into a couple steps. And the first thing would be, and I think it's probably the most important thing, is what type of player do you think that you are? And you might be wrong, right? Wrong, right. But you might be wrong. Yeah. But that nonetheless, doesn't make any difference. If you watch let's just say you're a fast skating goal scorer. Okay? That's what you think you are at 14 or 16 or 19 or whatever. Okay, so find when you go to a game, find a player that you think you play like. Each team probably has one or two of those guys, but let's say you're a fast skating goal scoring centerman. All right, so that's a little bit different now than a goal scoring winger. So when you watch a player of what you think is you're similar of, so watch what he does and evaluate what he does. So like watch what he does with the puck. Okay, so with the puck, what do I do with it when I have the puck, or what does this player do with it? What's his tendencies? Okay, so the tendency might be he seems to start low in his zone, and his neutral zone speed is like really, really fast, because that's what brings people out of their seats, is that kind of like the rush and entering the zone. So okay, so maybe that's a dot I can connect, that might be something. If he does that consistently, that's something that I probably might need to work with. Excuse me, one sec. I need a cigarette. Where do they take the puck? Right? There's patterns, right? One of the terms I use all the time is success leaves clues. So where do they take the puck? Do they take it wide? Do they cut inside the dots? Do they create plays from the middle of the ice? Do they take it deep? Do they do Gretzky curls? Do they hold up? Like, okay, so that's a tendency. So if you're watching 3, 4, 5 rushes and similar patterns are happening, okay, that's probably a good thing. If you're watching a player that's putting up points and stuff like that. What do they do when they move the puck? Where do they go after that? Do they, if they chip it out to the winger, do they kind of fall behind for maybe looking for a drop pass or letting him go deep, or is he driving the net real hard, or is he going behind the net, because behind the net creates a lot of space. So I'm not saying anything's good, because there's systems within systems, but those are patterns. So if you see someone, okay, that tends to be a pattern that a couple guys are doing. So maybe those are things that I should try to practice and emulate in a game. Why did he make that play? So you're not necessarily going to understand that right away, but if you start asking questions, why did it? So let's say he's got a really nice rush and he kicks it out to his forehand winger and then he drives the net. It's like, okay, why did he make that play? That's a good question. So I made that play probably because he's trying to get the defenseman's feet to move, trying to create confusion by going through the middle. These are questions that you can kind of ask, and you might be right, you might be wrong, but what you're doing is you're thinking about hockey. You're not just watching it.
Yep.
So that's really good. And then more importantly, because you don't have the puck all the time, is what do I do without the puck? So if I'm a fast, skilled, goal-scoring centerman, where do I go without the puck? So if it's in my zone, like, what am I doing? Am I out high waiting for a opportunity for a loose puck, or am I coming down low to help my D? And I'm like a defensive player. Well, you need to be doing that side, but why is he there, and where do they go without the puck? Neutral zone, where is he going without the puck? And just kind of follow these guys and see how the game comes to them, or how they make the game happen.
Yeah.
Right? Or how they have success. And then try to implement what you see, and try pulling things from their game, and keep watching them, and you'll see tendencies.
Yep.
And that's really important. The other thing, I'll just finish off a little bit.
Yep.
Another thing is watch what that particular team does. So that's why it's important to probably have a few guys that you feel like you play like, and because you could be playing, like, for example, in the OHL, you have teams like London and Saginaw, that they're a real puck possession team, really highly skilled puck possession team. So rarely do you see the Saginaw Spirit dump a puck. Like, it's very, very rare. So if you take that and you go against the Guelph Storm's a little bit, there's puck possession, but you'll see them dump that puck in a lot more. So that quick skating skilled guy might have a different look to him.
That's right. How does he fit in that system?
Right? But that's a system thing, so you got to kind of understand that a little bit too. But as you watch the game, you'll not as a fan, but as a student, then the puzzles kind of get put together, and it makes itself kind of clear how things are happening. So that makes a little bit more sense. So
yeah, so I got a lot on that.
Okay,
That was good.
good.
So the first thing I just want to go back, and because you're saying watching like a fan, and I just want to talk about a little bit more specifically about what that means, because that's if you're not a hockey person, you might not understand what that means. So, and as kids, you might not know what that means. So when you're talking about watching as a fan, what that means specifically is you're basically just watching the puck. You're just watching the flow of where the puck goes, right? So. And I'm not saying that every single time I watch a hockey game, I'm critically watching. Like, sometimes I do just watch as a fan. Watch the flow of the puck. Where is the puck going? Who has it? And your eyes are just fixated on where the puck goes.
Yeah.
That's watching as a fan. So when you're a player and you're trying to use watching hockey as a tool, then that's not using it as a tool, because it's too fast and you'll get overwhelmed by how fast things are moving. You can't pick things out if you just watch the puck with no purpose behind it. So that was the first thing. That's the first difference when you're talking about watching as a fan versus watching as a player, to use it as a tool to get better. So what you want to try to do when you're watching, which all those examples that you just gave are they're examples of how to do this. You want to get as specific as you can with what you're watching for. So even if you're watching, let's say somebody takes your advice and they really like Connor McDavid, and they go, okay, I'm just going to watch Connor McDavid. So no matter what happens, wherever the puck is, their eyes are just stuck on Connor McDavid. Well, that's better than just watching only the puck, but it's still hard to pull things out of what he's doing in his game if you don't have an intention behind watching him. Yeah. So if you're just blankly watching him and you're not asking the question of what's he doing in the D zone, what's he doing in the O zone, or what does he have when or what is he doing when he has the puck, then you're still it's still too fast. It's too much. You need to have a specific question you're trying to answer when you're watching. So that's another differentiation I want to make. So if you're going to try to watch specific things, then another piece of advice I would give along the lines that you normally give is when you're trying to develop yourself as a player, something you always say is pick 3 things you can do and do well. So when you're watching hockey, you can do the same thing. Pick 1 to 3 things that you're going to watch for. So all those examples you just gave, if you go to watch a hockey game and you say, okay, I'm going to watch for all these examples Coach Andy just gave, it's too many things. You can't keep up with it. So pick 1, 2, 3 things that you're going to watch this game for, and just focus on those 3 things so that your brain doesn't get scrambled eggs trying to follow everything, because there's too many things to follow.
Right?
Well,
so you're just going back to what I said about scouting. It's like, I gave a lot of stuff. But you go to scouting. You might go to a game, and you just might get, you might be just watching the D on X team,
right?
And particularly 1 or 2 guys, so you can kind of watch. Take the foot off the gas, and then when they come out, you can watch again. And that just keeps it simple. You're still gonna get what you need out of that game. But as a player, it's the same thing. It might be just, okay, I'm gonna watch all entries. How do they enter the puck? All game. Okay, well, and there's a tendency there. So
right. So and then that's
simplify.
My second. You want to narrow the scope as much as you can. But to my second point was going to be just that you also don't have to watch just players. Like you're saying at the end, there can be system things you need to look out for, or there can just be like entries, like you just said, that you watch out for. Right.
Could be, or another really good thing, just watch back checks.
That's
perfect, a really good thing, because without a puck, just watch. Do they take a guy to the net, or they go to the middle? Like just little things like that. Especially
if you don't know exactly who you play like, because for some of these kids that are, when you're 14, 15, 16, you might not know who you play like. And actually most kids don't, because when they come in here and we say, who do you think you play like? Most kids don't have a good answer, right? They don't know who they play like. So that's one thing.
And so this goes to that point though. A lot of kids these days don't watch actual hockey games. They watch highlights. So they'll see
that's right.
Connor McDavid, McKinnon, Cale Makar.
That's right.
Guys are on the highlights all the time. And they don't actually understand the game. They just see highlights. So
and hockey's not highlights.
No.
The highlights are highlights. They're not the rest of the game, right? So that's another point. So another thing you could look for too, and this was actually something that I remember you and Welly talking about last summer. You were saying, or he was talking about his approach to coaching, and he was talking about the idea of keeping everything within the dots, which obviously makes sense. But if there's a specific quality you're looking for to develop in yourself. So easy one, let's say you want to score more goals, for example. Pay attention to where the goals are scored. Where are the pucks coming from? So if you're a forward, where do most of the goals in the game come from? So if they're all coming from the trapezoid area, everyone talks about the house, from the crease out to the dots and up or whatever, to the hash marks. If that is where most of the goals are scored, which they actually are, that ends up being that little half moon area. From dot to dot in front of the net.
It starts to, as it goes out, when they do the shot trackers, it just starts to trickle out a little bit.
Yeah, you can see that. And
funnels into
actually, that's a good point too, tracking where the shots come from, because the shots are an indication of where the goals are going to come from. But watch that. So if you say, wow, I actually never get to that area on the ice, well, that's probably a good lesson to take. If I'm never in the area where most goals are scored in hockey, then I'm going to get less goals. And if it's not goals, if it's something more complicated, where do most of the hits happen? And if most, I'm just making this up, if most of the hits happen in the corners in the offensive zone, then you better get on your horse and make sure you're forechecking if you're a guy that likes to hit. And you're just like, man, I feel like I'm always trying to go for the big hit, open ice, but I don't really get 5, 6, 7 hits a game. It's like, well, maybe you're not going into the corners to where the hits happen. That's where the hits happen, So there's a lot of different pieces that you can look for. And this is why I wanted to answer this question on the podcast, because it depends, as I always say, right? It's like, depends on what kind of player you are, what you're looking for, what kind of role you play, all those types of things. But hopefully that's helpful for the kid that asked the question, because it was something I actually did more than I would say most kids. Like I would watch with purpose. But I probably would do watch one guy and just follow him around without really having a question I'm trying to answer. So that would be my leaving piece of advice. If there's have a question in your head that you're trying to answer when you watch, instead of just surface watch or just follow a player around, that's probably a better strategy for that. Hopefully that's helpful. And then if you have a more specific direction you want to go with that for the kid asking the question than anybody else, if you have way to specify further, then we'll be able to give more specific advice on what you should look for in your circumstance, etc. You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Et cetera. So
Let her rip.
we were talking the other day.
I love this. This is just going to be such a good topic. I'm fired up to talk about this. It's good.
So someone came into our office the other day and said there was game was getting out of hand, and this is in youth hockey. So I think the kids are 10, 9, 10, 10, 11.
Yeah, 10, 11, yeah.
And it was getting chippy, and there was a fight, and his son went in and, cross-checked the guy a couple times, and it was like, should I fight him or should I not? And the dad said, what do you think?
Yeah.
Right?
Is it appropriate?
Is it appropriate? Yeah, okay, so I can go into my answer. So it's a loaded question, because my answer in youth hockey is there a place for fighting in youth hockey? That was the question. And he goes, oh, I know your kid. Like, I go, no. My kid was not allowed to fight in youth hockey. That was
and right up to draft year.
Right.
Yeah.
I said that if you fight, I'll be pissed. Not because you got in a fight,
right?
Because there's absolutely no need for it, in my opinion. Okay. Now I know some parents are going to say, yeah, but, and this, that, the other thing. I said, yeah.
Listen,
just
listen to the full answer first.
Just hang. I said, my answer is there may be an extreme. Like, there's extremes in everything, right?
Yeah.
And the extremes are the ones that people talk about. Right. So, like, if someone came across the ice, two-handed you across the head, started ripping your helmet off, and started wailing away at you, sure, son, do what you need to do. But for the most part, everything is controllable in youth hockey, period. So my point to that is there's no place for fighting, and I'm not soft, guys. There's no place for fighting in youth hockey. Zero. Bottom line, you're getting kicked out and getting suspended. You have cages on. It's not a thing in youth hockey. At higher levels, it's part of the game. It's the game within the game, and it's a 5-minute penalty. And there's rules for fighting. But in youth hockey, you're not allowed to fight. In international hockey, you're not allowed to fight. You get kicked out. And I could be wrong. I called a ref yesterday, an OHL ref that works for us, and I said, "What's the suspension for fighting in youth hockey?" Well, you throw a punch and you get caught throwing a punch. It's a game. And
even buckets on.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. They can consider that fighting right away.
Okay.
And then the league can determine how long of a suspension it is. And I've seen kids get in one fight and get 5-game suspension. It's a nothing fight. It's not worth it.
Right.
So there's a couple sides to this. Number one, from a parent perspective, right? When I said, Charlie, there is zero fighting in the game, he was fine with it. But my perspective was, first of all, I need you to control your emotions a little bit. There's other ways that you can do it. Number two, it's costing me a heck of a lot of money, and I don't want.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's probably the more important.
Yeah.
Is that if it's costing me $5,000 and you take 5-game suspension or 7 or whatever, I'm not happy. It's not an accident.
Yeah, my dad used to say that to me too.
Yeah, like a hit from behind.
Took a day off work, man. Fuck off.
Yeah, a hit from behind. You can that could be an accident, that could be an accident.
Yeah.
And even Charlie pitchforked this one guy one time. Is that better? No, I'm not saying it's better, but you have to do something. And this is the argument. Well, why don't you just let them fight? Whatever. But he pitchforked a guy, and he got a 5-minute or a 4-minute penalty, something like that. Probably should have been suspended for life. This is in his draft year. Is that better? No, but and I'm not careful how I say it, but it's something that you can get away with. You know what I mean?
No, that's the honest answer.
Yeah.
Man.
So like if you and I fight, the refs see it, the fans see it. Like, you can't say I didn't fight. No, you're fighting.
Yeah.
If you stick someone, cross-check someone or whatever, I didn't, or not everyone sees them. You can get away with it. So you're not getting suspended.
And just to be clear, you're not telling people to go around sticking people, because I know someone's going to yell at me in the comments. That's
if I'm going to be honest, you do whatever you need to do.
Okay, but this is what it's about, man. It's about being honest, and it's way easier to do something a little bit chippy that's a little bit cheap, and you'll get away with it, especially in minor hockey, rather than like one thing that used to happen to me. I remember is guys would come hit and they'd pop their knob out a little bit.
I used to back check like that.
Oh, right in the ribs. Like,
Yeah.
hurts, man.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna. There's no like serious danger necessarily. Like if something goes catastrophically wrong, you might crack a rib or something. But nothing that's like catastrophically dangerous, and you're not gonna get 2, 3, 5 games for fighting when it doesn't actually matter. It's not a real fight.
No.
That's the thing in minor hockey. You know, it's like if you're gonna drop your gloves, by the time you try to get the cages off, the refs are hopping in. Now you dropped your gloves. Now you get 2 games anyways. It's not even like it was a real fight.
It's not worth it.
And normally it's about
and
nothing.
you might get a shot in the punch a guy in the nose or something.
But most of the time it's nothing though.
Yeah.
Like most of the time there was a scrum in front of the net and it's just a bunch of teenagers that are getting fired up. Yeah. And it's not like it was the extreme that you're talking about where a guy runs a guy and you're like, okay, it's like somebody needs to deal with this. That's a different situation. Yeah. But for the most part, I agree with what you're saying. Like it's just not. There's no point doing it, and you're just gonna get yourself kicked out of the game, suspended, whatever.
Well, let's look at who does it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is probably another issue. So this is let's use our head. Okay. So youth hockey, a kid that snaps, like let's say you're 10 years old and snaps and drops his gloves and starts fighting someone. That kid, not saying 100%, but most of the times lacks a lot of control.
Oh yeah.
Like and in fact, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but you probably have some issues outside of hockey.
Yep.
Because at 10 years old or 8 years old, if you're wailing on someone, then that means you just have no control, or you have a bad temper, or you need to get your way and you don't like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then as you get older, let's just say 13, 14 years around high school, most of the kids that do that are doing it trying to impress their girlfriend, because they're lacking something else, and that's probably the talent and skill to be a good hockey player.
Yep.
Most of the times. So those are the extremes. Like usually the guys that get in the scraps are the guys you don't really necessarily need on your team, or that they're trying to fight, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. And now the other side of it is, no, I want to go into that part after. So, so for mine, it's extreme. Like if you had to actually defend yourself, then that's one thing. Like you had to defend yourself. That's one thing. But to go out and get in a scrap in youth hockey, it's pointless, and shows zero control. And in my books, there's no. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, are you going to get into the coach ref thing that you were talking about?
Yeah, I was going to do that right now.
Okay, go ahead.
So here's the thing. This is where youth hockey has to get better. And it won't. It won't, because we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people, and we're dealing with emotions, and we're dealing with sometimes leaders aren't really smart. You know,
it's a complex issue.
It's a complex issue, but in theory, this is what we need to do. We need to have the game of hockey is played, and the rules are there's no fighting in hockey. Okay, good enough. So, there's a couple people that can actually control the game. One is your refs. So anybody that's reffing, and this is hard because kids start off and they don't really, and maybe guys that never really played the game are reffing and they don't have a grasp of how a flow of a game goes. So early in a game, if you see something cheap, because let's say like in this local area, it's Windsor, Sun County hate each other, right?
Yep.
So, and some of them go to school together and stuff, but when they play, it's a hatred. That's where being cool and getting a fight would be a good thing.
That's right. Yeah.
But the coaches can set the tone for that, right? Yeah. And this is going to be going into the next point I'm talking about, is about how do you be a tough player then, right? How do you be a tough player is if you can't fight and stuff. Okay, there's a ton of ways, but the tone is set by, number one, the refs. So when the ref sees one cheap shot, or the game is now 3-0 and it's only 2 minutes in the game, or it's 5-0 going into the third, 7-0 going into the third, or whatever, you start seeing a little bit of aggression that's unnecessary, we'll call it, after the whistle stuff. The ref has the ability to stop that right there. It's penalty. Go to the bench, tell the kids, no cheat stuff, or you're done. It ends right now. I will be calling everything. Right? Tell the coach. Go to the other bench, do the exact same thing, and then do it. And then it doesn't get out of hand. It can't. Right? It just can't. So that's that. The other leader has to be the coaches on every team, and this is the rule I had every time I coached youth hockey. It's like zero fighting. And the other rule I had was, I had a couple, no chirping, and another one, unless your leg is hanging off your, on a thread, you're not allowed to lay down. And a couple kids tried it, and they said, "Well, I was trying to draw a penalty." I said, "I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Get up and go to the bench. If they didn't get called, you didn't get called. I don't want you laying there and acting like you're hurt, because as a parent or a coach, like, parents get concerned, and it's just, you know what? It's not cool.
That was the rule. My dad said
Yeah.
that too. Like
Yeah.
there was some times where I actually couldn't get up,
Yeah.
and I knew that was the rule. So I was like, try to hobble to the
Good.
bench because I knew
Good.
my dad's gonna be pissed if I
Yep.
lay. Because and then I would go off. He'd be like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Dude, I couldn't breathe." He'd be like,
Yeah.
"Man, it's okay. Like
Yeah.
you could stay there and take a breath."
Yeah.
But the rule was,
Yeah.
get your ass off the ice, man.
Yeah.
Like don't lay there and make a scene when you're okay.
Yeah.
You better be out of the game. If you're laying
100%.
down, you better be done.
100%.
You know?
Well, there's so many times guys have laid there,
I know.
and you get curfewed because you only have an hour and a half of
Seriously.
ice, and
Yeah,
kid
yeah.
laid there for 15 minutes
Yeah.
to get up and play the next day.
Yeah. That's
It's like, if you're hurt, that's fine,
yeah.
but get up.
Yeah,
So anyways, I
side
got off
tangent,
tangent, but
yeah.
this is the coach. You set rules. You set precedents on your team. And these are the rules. So there's no fighting. And when the game starts to get a little bit under control, even though I know you get emotional. I know. And you want to win.
Yeah.
And that kid hit this guy. You don't like that kid on the other team and all that kind of stuff. You're in control of your team and your bench and your players. And you give them a stern, guys, one thing. You play tough, you play hard, but none of the bullshit. None. Zero.
Well, and as a side note to this too, this is why it's super important to actually stick to your word. And we were talking about some OHL stuff, even with how coaches relay messages to their players, and how it's like for first year guys sometimes like it's just bullshit. Like what you just said, you're not even doing what you said. You know?
Yeah.
And when you're a coach, or if you happen to be a ref listening to this, it's very important that you do what you say. So if you're a ref and you say there's nothing, I'm kicking you out. As soon as there's one thing, out.
Yeah.
And then you can go to the bench. Say, I told you. I said there's nothing.
Yeah.
If you're the coach,
Yeah.
I don't care if it's your top player that scores all the goals and it's a 1-goal game. If he goes against what you said, he's got to be done.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the results of minor hockey, it's not that consequential to anybody's life.
Yeah.
And you taking a kid out of the game might actually teach him a good lesson. And it's not going to ruin his life if you sit him for the rest of the game or whatever.
No, it's
you know, so you have to stick to your guns when you have rules as a coach, or if you're the ref and you're going to try to lay the law down, you have to stick to it, man. It's really important because that's how you get the respect to your kids, because they'll know you're actually going to do what you said.
Yeah.
So this is how you keep, like you said, you keep control of your team. And you've already acknowledged there's some exceptions where something crazy happens and whatever. We're not talking about the extremes. We're talking about general hockey playing in minor hockey.
Yeah.
You have to actually stick to what you say you're going to do if you're the coach. It's
Yeah.
very, very important, because otherwise the kids aren't stupid, man. They see through bullshit. I remember being on the bench when I was a kid, even in minor hockey. Like I say it all the time. I look at my coach and be like, you do it. You don't even do what you say.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just no respect then. You get no respect from your guys if you just talk bullshit and don't actually enforce what you're saying. You know? So I just want to stick on that point for a sec.
Yeah. No, so not all refs have the ability to control the game, and that's where it's hard. So that's why it's good if coaches are actually educated and have the ability, which it's not possible.
Yeah.
Because some coaches are parents, by the way.
Yeah.
Or they don't have it, or they just get emotionally involved. And in the game, within the game, you can go nuts, and you do things,
Totally,
you do
man. It's
things,
hard.
and you say things, and you act in ways that you would never act
Mm-hmm.
outside of the rink.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so not all coaches can control the team either. That's the weird thing. So who's left to control the game if the refs and
if the leaders aren't doing it?
organizations, like, who's left? Well, no, but this is most important. It has to start at home.
Yeah.
Right. So like the talk that I have with my kid, I'm not the perfect dad, by the way, but you know, you can obviously tell that I've had conversations with my son, and there's things that you're just not allowed to do, kid. You know, so at home, these talks have to be done. Now, having said that, this is the most difficult group to actually get this message to, right? Because parents are parents. I can't tell you how many times in youth hockey, like, okay, here's a little the smallest example of where people go nuts. Like, how is your kid going to be controlled when you're sitting beside this, right? I can go on forever here, right? So Charlie is in Major Bantam Major Bantam. So at the home rink where Charlie's team played, the Windsor Junior Spitfires, we sat in a corner, my wife and I, because no one usually sat there. And we've done this game after game for a couple of years. No one really bothered us. So one game where a visiting team comes in and they sat right beside us. No big deal. Like
Yeah, actually,
it's
no
not
big
an
deal.
issue.
Yeah.
Like, okay, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Just setting the tone for the story.
But it's
Yeah.
like they look at you like they're weaned on a dill pickle, right? It's like what? Like, what do we do? Hi, how you doing? How's your kid? Like,
Yeah.
how was your trip up? And it was just like, so the game starts going, and they're yelling and screaming, and then let's say our team scored or something like that, and my wife, being a mom, is like, cheering a little bit, and this lady yells at her and goes, "Why don't you go sit in your team side?" So my wife wanted to say something, and it's like, whose side?
What?
Hey, we sit here every day.
Yeah.
Who are you to say, like, which side where we're supposed to sit on?
Yeah.
And then she would just yap. And so, anyways, there's that. There's parents go absolutely nuts. Like, if I can't even tell you how many times I've heard a parent yelling at a 10, 12, 14-year-old game, yelling, "Kill that kid!"
Yeah.
Kill that
Yeah.
kid.
You idiot.
You idiot. You dummy. I
You
told you.
goon.
Yeah. And
Come on, man.
and saying things that, like, you don't say that. So if that's what's happening,
Yeah.
how does a kid have a chance?
Well, and
Zero chance, man.
Yeah. Well, and sorry to cut you off, but
That's okay.
because I don't
like
have
it.
I don't have kids, so I don't have a good perspective on this. But I was at a game last weekend. It was the U15s.
Yeah.
And just watching the parent behavior. So my point to bring this up is I don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like to watch your kid get rocked or getting beaked all game, or guys going after him all game or whatever. But I had just two quick examples from that game alone, where right down the rail, standing a couple people down from me, the kid got hit, and it was a fine hit. Like, it was fine. And the guy, because it was his kid that got hit, he's yelling, "That's a headshot! Like, where's the call?
Everything's wrong with that hit every time. Every time. So it's against your kid or your team. If they get hit hard or even dirty, whatever, everything's bad about that.
That's right.
And then you're gonna say the reverse.
That's right. Yeah. And so then there was another kid, and he's actually a really good player, and he just gets mauled and beaked and whacked all game, whatever. And they're the parents, the dad in particular, watching. I was just paying attention in the last period just to the parent behavior, and you can see him. He gets all fired up. He's just like, "Hey, like, where's the call? Like, what?" Going nuts because his kid takes a beating all game, and it's like, he's got to take the beating, man. Like, just stay calm. It's okay. Like, there's nothing you can do from here, But to your point, if you go home, and I don't know what that conversation is with kid and dad or kid and mom, where it's like, well, that kid's a goon and he's skating around being an idiot and somebody should crack him one and like all this kind of crap.
That's a lot of them.
And it's like, okay, then you can't expect games to stay in control. That's this is how things get out of hand, like you're saying, right?
Well, so the opposite of what I was going to say about that hit. When your team or your son gets hit hard or something happens where it's not in their favor, it's the worst thing in the world. Parents go nuts, smacking the glass, yelling at the coach, yelling at the ref, pointing fingers. "I'm going to kill you. Wait in the parking lot. I'm going to rip your head off. And down your neck." Like, everyone's so tough, right?
Yeah.
And then the opposite's true, is that if that same team or that same kid just annihilates somebody in youth hockey, it's like they're cheering, and kid could be laying there with broken ribs, and mom and dad are cheering, and no, you don't cheer. It's just the game.
I know. Well,
it's just the game.
Another side.
Or cheering for a penalty, like, it's like, no, it's not a play, it's a penalty.
Yeah,
you don't cheer for a penalty.
Act like an adult. Like, that's so it's a funny, just a little side story. It's funny dynamic. So in that same game, in the third period where I was standing, one of the dads from one team came to talk because I train his kid. So I had him on the left. And then another dad came to talk from the other team, and I had him on the right. Yeah. And so they stood and we were watching for a couple minutes, and it was fine. But you could see every time something happened to one side versus the other side, one of the dads would be like, get a little fired up, and then they would kind of like look at me. Like, there was one play in particular, it was a hit or something, and he was like, "Oh, like, come on," like, just made some comment, and then he looked at me, he's like, was that not good? And I was like, it was all right, like, it wasn't that bad, right? But you can just see the parents, they get fired up, and it's like, again, back to your trying to maybe get us back on task here.
No, it's okay, we're good.
Yeah, you were saying about starts at home, like, the parents, you got to get your kid under control, but you have to be under control in order to do that, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you, as a parent, though, there's one thing that I always, and I still have fear. for my son, and it's when, like, now that he's in the OHL, it's like in a fight.
Right.
I want him to be safe. I like.
My mom used to
Okay,
say
so
that
this
too.
is here's to answer your question. Okay, you said, like, I don't know what it's like to be a parent. Well, I've taught my son from an early age. Okay, these are a couple things that when he plays hockey, I said, like, anything can happen at any time. So your head has to be up, you have to be aware, and you have to be keep yourself safe. So I told him, at no matter what, if you have the puck, the head's up. If you move the puck, it's never looking at it and stick down. You move the puck, or when anytime that you're not right involved in the play, because anything could happen. It could happen in warm up. Your stick is up, arms are up. Like, so, if you remove hockey, if you get in if someone comes out to you in a bar or on the streets and wants to fight, if your hands are down, you're going to get clocked if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't defend yourself. So your best position would be to stand like this or to stand like this, so that if something happened, you're in a defensive mode or you can attack back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to cut you off again. One thing I just heard yesterday, police officers,
Yeah.
if you ever see them when they're talking with
Yeah.
someone, their hands are always like this.
Yep.
So they got their elbows at their
You're ready.
sides,
Yeah.
and they got their hands up
Yep.
right here. They're always grabbing their vest right here.
100%.
So they're blocking their sides
Yeah.
if something comes from the side, and they're ready. They got their hands right by their face if something happens. You know,
Right.
It's just to your point.
So yeah, so Charlie laid a guy out this year, and people were saying it was a late hit. It wasn't a late hit. Guy moved the puck, and he dropped his hands, and Charlie was there, and he ran him over with a diesel train. Got in a fight after, and it's like that's your fault. That's your fault. And I would say the same to Charlie. I've always said that. So that was one of my first rules, and not rule, but I taught him at all times.
Yeah,
you
be
move
ready.
the puck, you're skating up the ice. Like, even in warm up, you don't skate around like this, because you can bump in your own guy. Someone in the NHL just got KO'd from that. So you're always here so that you can protect yourself, always. So ironically enough, it was a couple games ago against Owen Sound, and he was carrying the puck, and he got hit while he was carrying the puck, and got him off balance, so he fell. As he was getting up to go get a puck again, he was like half up, and another guy came to kind of run him. He would run him good, but Charlie got up, and his stick was up, so it protected him, right? I've told him also, like, different ways to go into boards to retrieve pucks. You're either really tight, really fast, or you go into those boards that you have to read it a little bit and put yourself in a less vulnerable position. So you have to put the brakes and use your body and stuff like that. So anyways, that's that. So to answer your question, what is it like as a parent watching that, is my fear, because there's some, for lack of a better term, there's some dumb kids. Just, and not even maybe intentionally vicious, but they're dumb.
They get caught in the moment.
They
and do
got in the
stupid
moment,
shit, yeah.
and or they just can't read anything. And my biggest fear was him going for a puck, 5-6 feet from the boards, and someone running him from behind, and
Yeah.
that, like, it scared me
Well,
several times.
That happened to me.
Several
That's
times
this gash, right?
Right.
I was a winger. Puck got rimmed,
Right.
so I'm 3 feet from the boards. I'm
Yeah.
going to get it, and some guy
Yeah.
came behind,
Yeah.
gave me the whack. My visor slung up.
Yeah.
Cracked myself
Yeah.
right just above the eye, just blood all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, brutal.
Yeah.
And my parents used to say the same thing. My mom, actually, my mom, nicest lady ever.
Yeah.
She said when I would get into a fight, she was like, I don't know what would happen to me.
Yeah.
But she was like, I would just be like aggressive. Like, I want, in the moment
yeah,
of
you're-
watching the fight, like,
yeah.
I just want you to kill the other kid so
Yeah.
that he doesn't touch you, kind
Yeah.
of thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
But then the other side of it was, because my son's very physical, I'm like, I don't want you hurting anyone either. Like, and I explained to him, like, several times, even today, I'll talk to him, like, like when one guy in the OHL recently got a 15 gamer for, the icing or whatever, and he gave a guy a shot, and I sent it to him right away. I said, you're aware of this, eh? I don't want him hurting someone, not even accidentally.
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
those are so dangerous. So, like, at least I've done that part,
Right.
and help him be aware. And I know his coaches do, and he's not a dummy.
Right.
The next piece is that when you're watching your son, so for me, it might have been a little bit different, because I gave my son the basics, and then within the game, maybe because I played and coached, is like, I never got emotional about guys trying to run him and stuff, because I knew he could take care of himself. And I know, and honestly, it was just part of the game. So if someone wants, and he got hit a couple of times very hard, and I would just sit there and go, oh, we took one there, you get better, you're learning.
Yeah.
I never really got I wouldn't get upset with a kid for playing hard against my son. That's okay, because my son's playing hard against you, so it's fine.
Yep.
He's had games where, series where guys were trying to take him out, and that's not the right word, but trying to play him really, really, really hard,
Yes. Giving
and
him
maybe
specific attention.
little bit of liberties here and there and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's and when people would say something like they're all over him, I go, well, that's what you get when you're.
Gotta be able to handle the heat,
what
man.
do you expect? Like, you can't suck and blow at the same time, right? Can't do it. You can't be a really good player and expect everybody to just let you be a good player. That's what comes with the territory, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And I used to play with welts all over me. My mom used to cry. She goes, "You can't even walk." I go, "No, I like it.
Mhm.
I like it." But that's part of that competitive nature, and that's actually part of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the podcast. It's just what is actually tough.
Yeah.
So, anyways, for parents, yeah, it's hard to control, but you got to remove yourself. The kids are playing. They're playing, and then you do the best you can teach, and then try to rein in the emotions. And then let's be honest about this. At the end of the day, even though most people don't really understand it, is most likely your son or your family or you as a player are not hitting high levels. So you keep it intact.
Yep.
Use hockey for what it is. Learn, play hard, compete, all that stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
then last part I'll throw on that before we go on is if you're the kid now, because we talked about refs, coaches, parents, whatever. If you're the kid too, and some kids just got to screw loose, and there's nothing
Yep.
you can do. But like you said, for your advice to Charlie, like, kids, take the advice for yourself. You have to have a brain, as we always say. Keep yourself ready. Keep yourself prepared for whatever can happen, and keep things in perspective when you're on the ice. Like, are you going to go get in a fight? Like, are you actually going to go get in a fight? Do you know how to fight? Do you know what that even means? You know how to do that? And so when you start to answer some of these questions, it makes more sense to walk away from it until it's appropriate when you get to higher levels and there's a place for it in the game where it's understood that that's something that can happen. Otherwise, when you're a kid, it's stupid and pointless because you just take yourself out of the game and there's no real reason for it, because normally the circumstances that come up are not that big of a deal and not worth the fight anyways.
Yeah.
So I just keep that intact. So
Yeah.
going on to the next thing,
Mm-hmm.
this question sparked the idea now of what it actually means to be tough.
Yeah, so let me just interrupt you for 1 second. So if you're playing hockey, if you go to a bar and a guy says, "Let's scrap," fighting is not necessarily your smart move.
That's right.
You don't have to.
Right.
So he can call you all the names that guys that don't fight are, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's probably worth not fighting. So in a hockey game, if a guy wants to fight and he calls you all the names that guys that don't fight or aren't willing to fight are called, it's just words, man. You're not tough.
Yeah, and
You're not tough.
You have to identify when it's like there's a guy I played with. Just another side note. He ended up getting called up to play with the Spits as a fighter.
Yeah.
And you know what happened? Nobody fought him.
Yeah.
Because you're not relevant to this game unless you fight.
That's
so
right.
why would I fight you?
Yeah.
If you're the fighter guy that's just going around looking for fights, if I just don't fight you, then you're not relevant in this game at all because you're not actually good enough to play. You're just here to fight.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing too. You got to judge. And again, we're not saying, especially at higher levels, we're not saying don't fight. Like, you should be able to fight. You should be able to handle yourself. But for fighting just to fight or because you think it's cool or whatever the reason is, it's not the game.
No,
it's not the game.
It's not the game.
So I wanted to talk about the tough thing briefly before you go into it.
Yeah.
So toughness, what it means, it's a lot like when we were talking about leadership, like define tough.
Yeah.
Like, how do you define leader? Like, it's hard to define, right? The only way you can really talk about what it means is by using examples of what it means, and a lot of people, their impulse thinking about the word tough is fighting, is being able to fight.
Yeah.
And as you get to higher levels, you start to realize who the actual tough guys are.
Yeah.
And who's just a fighter.
Yeah. Who's a pretender.
And who's a pretender too, definitely. But a lot of times I don't necessarily throw the word tough. Like, toughness doesn't necessarily mean you can pound anybody that you fight.
It doesn't mean that at all.
It doesn't mean that. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yes.
And like I said, if all you can do is fight and that's how you're tough, then you're actually irrelevant to hockey.
Yeah.
Nobody needs you. And you can see in hockey in today's game, no team has like a fighter. A pure fighter. There's guys that can fight, but they play tough
and fight a lot.
Right? So it's like, if the example that comes to mind for me is like Ryan Reeves.
Yeah.
he'll pound the piss out of you, but he plays hard, man. He finishes hits, he digs
Great
in the
hockey
corner.
player.
He does way more than just
God, yeah.
the old Ty Domi style.
Yeah.
Can't really play,
Well,
but just
okay,
fights,
so you just
right?
mentioned the name Ty Domi. So
Yeah.
I was funny. I was going to throw this in the podcast, but then I'm like, because and it goes along with what you're saying. Because I know that some people, the guys that come on our thing and they say, yeah, you're wrong about this. You're wrong about this. Okay, here's the thing. Again, they're going to argue about this, by the way. Most people think that tough guys can't play. I played against Ty Domi in junior. He could play hockey. He was on the ice and he hit and hit and hit, and he was so effective, and he would get points and he would fight. I've played against a lot of really, really tough guys. If you go take tough guys in the NHL, Matt Martin, who was one of our guys in the Islanders, a lot of people say, well, he's just a fighter. No. They're so good. They're so good.
So sorry, pause then. So Ty Domi's who's an example of a guy that was just fighting? Because like another one that came to mind to me was Bob Probert, but he could play.
30 goals in the NHL,
right?
All-Star game.
Yeah, so he was actually good. So he's like, so if Ty Domi's not a good example, who would be like a? Because I can't even think because it was all before me.
There's not a lot. Like maybe Dave Schultz that played for the Philadelphia Flyers in '76.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah.
Or they bring up a Meathead.
Yeah.
Playing in the American League, but listen. If you play in the OHL and you get like regular shift, you're probably you're better than what. If someone says he's not a good player, it's either because he's like an outstanding NHL player, saying yeah, the guy's no good, or he's a guy that doesn't understand hockey that never got past midget.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So I threw out Ty Domi without really thinking about it.
Ty Domi is really good, but let's say Frank Bialowis that played, brought up to Toronto and a couple times and stuff like that. Like he was there to fight.
Yeah.
But he could still play.
Yeah, he could still
play the American League, and you know what I mean. So,
well, that's what guys were giving me heat about when I was talking about Lucic. Like they were talking about Lucic like he's no good. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, man?
If you came here right now,
I know you can't even think of a name from the past 2 decades of a guy that couldn't play and only fought.
No,
I can't. I can't. I don't
know. No.
But anyhow,
they're good. I know them, man.
Yeah.
They're good.
But anyways, so
yes.
To the toughness piece, it's not just the fighting thing. So you can go now.
Toughness to me, well, no, this is going to take a while. Toughness is if you're looking at just fighting, then that's only one aspect of it. It's like how do you make chili, right? You need beef, you need tomatoes, you need this, that, and the other thing. Okay, there's your chili. Go. Can you make it any other way? Yeah. Well, there's limitless ways that you can make chili, right? So what's tough? Is it a fighter? Well, that's part of it. Is it a guy that hits? Well, that's part of it. Okay, the guy that sticks people, that's part of it. Well, there's also mentally tough. There's emotional tough. There's toughness is a complete person. Like that's not the right word, but it encompasses a lot more than just physically tough.
That's right.
Because physically tough, there's an element of you that has to be mentally tough or a screw loose, and emotionally tough. Because to get into a hockey fight, let's say, there's a thought. Like you either snap and go, right? On a dime, you just do it. But there's still that. It's still you've had the fight or flight feeling, that it'll fool you, because if you think about that fight or flight, you'll flight. You'll get out of here, because it's the same feeling of it's just adrenaline, but it can pull you back or it can push you forward. So, anyways, there's more to it than just being physically tough. So what does it mean to be a tough hockey player? Now, when I do this, I always think that there's someone, or like, let's say half the people watching are like non-violent, nice people. And then I think I should probably put a little bit of velvet on the sledgehammer so that I don't offend people. And then I'm also conscious of that there's younger players that are playing youth hockey, and I don't want to send the wrong message. So it's like, okay, I put the velvet on the sledgehammer again. And then the real side of me is I want to tell this is how it is. So I'm going to go more on that side, because if you're offended by this, then whatever.
Yeah.
Hockey is a tough game. It's tough. If you're not tough mentally, physically, emotionally, and there might be other ones, and have some type of a like tough. Yeah, I guess physically having a pain tolerance. If you don't have that, you're not ever going to be a hockey player. You just you just can't do it. There's a lot of ways that you get to be tough, but hockey's hard. Hockey's tough. Hockey is there's nothing easy about it when it's real. It's hard, man. So like you need to be in tip top shape. Just to do that, you have to be tough because you got to get up and do it every day. That's just a toughness to just and persistence to do that every single day. So everything about it, you have an element of toughness. So you could say, well, Johnny Gaudreau is not a tough guy. Yeah, he is because he's a small guy, smaller than everybody. He doesn't go out and fight, but he's battling in corners. He's not the biggest guy, but he has to get in shape, and he's mentally and emotionally strong.
He can handle it.
So I'm just saying that so that if anybody, so I don't get the message that you don't need, the tougher you are, the better. In every way.
Yeah, it's never worse to be tougher. Yeah.
The tougher you are, the better. Like if your skin is thick like a rhinoceros's, better than not. You know what I mean? I don't mean that physically. I mean so that nothing penetrates your emotions. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So the tougher you are, the better. So tough doesn't mean goon. Like I'm going to tell you what tough isn't. Tough does not mean goon, like you said. That's not what a tough guy is. Okay, that's tough to only a certain degree. It's tough but not valuable, except for like in maybe a small piece of the game. You still have to be able to play the game to be effective. So that's that. There's pretend tough and pretend tough. I see this more than not. Is I've got guys that play that they're you would think that they're going to be tough guys.
Yeah, seriously.
And tell me straight out. Well, I'm not even strong, and I'm scared. Like I'll get shit pumped. It's like, but you don't walk around and that's how insecure they are. They give this persona like, yeah, I'm a big tough kid, but they're actually scared shitless and they won't do it. So that's the pretend tough, right? And I'm not talking about just the fighting piece, but that's part. But so if they say that, then their mental makeup is not right, right? True that.
Yeah, true that.
So that's pretend tough. Pretend tough players play hard sometimes. They play hard when they're physically superior to someone. They play hard when they're against weaker players or weaker teams. Then they're all ready to go. When it's a real hockey game, when they can match. That's what we talked about Mike Tyson.
I was just going to say that,
right?
Mike Tyson
is like he won most of his fights because he was just a superior athlete, bigger, stronger, and better. Till he met someone his match, he never fought. And who am I to tell anybody that Mike Tyson's not a good fighter? But he didn't have that fight. Right?
When it's a true battle.
When it's a true battle.
Everything's equal,
right.
And it's just a battle of wills now.
That's right.
That's an actual fight.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's pretending, right? Playing hard when against weaker players, but once you get a real competition, you find a way to hide, or you just don't compete. You back down. It's kind of the same thing, but you back down to players that are bigger or better. So it's always funny, and you'll see this a lot of times. Guys that when they'll go after the smaller guy or the guy that they think can't defend themselves as well or take care of it, and they get picked on a little. They try to pick on those guys a little bit, and it's like they go up against someone that's bigger, stronger, that they back off. They're not as aggressive. So you can see the pretend there all day. So let's take away the physical aspect of it. It's like if you're playing, let's just use the NHL right now. The best team is probably Tampa Bay. Okay, so and then the worst team in the NHL right now is Arizona. Let's say that, okay? So if you're a player that feasts on Arizona and Philadelphia and Montreal right now, those are your best games. But when you play Tampa, Florida, and New York Rangers, in Carolina, you're nowhere to be found. You're one of those players that, you're not a real competitor, right? You got to show up to the games that count, the games that are real. And Arizona is not. I'm not saying they're shit, but in the NHL, you know what I mean. When you only want to play against the easy games, right? You get your 2-3 goals there and all that stuff. Pretending is the guys that don't take on the stressful situations well. Okay, so like you get into games where, so this is more of a mental tough thing, right? So you get into playoff series or big games or, tight games, extremely hard games, and you get overwhelmed by the situation. That's not tough. That means you're mentally weak now. You pick and choose when to compete. That's kind of what I said before. Love the easy games. Another side of it is that you don't take criticism from your coach or coaching well.
That's
right?
a good one.
So what does that have to do with toughness? Well, if the coach gives it to you because you had a bad play, and if you buckle and you can't play anymore, that's a mental weakness, right? So that's another side of it. You get mentally frustrated, right, when things don't go your way, or overwhelmed again. You whine and you bitch and moan when things don't go your way. Now, the last thing I want to say before we move on to a little bit more is, from the physical side, there's a big difference between being dirty and being tough.
Oh yeah,
big difference. And a lot of the times you see little chicken shit guys be the dirty ones and then run away. And then, so what do you do in a situation like that, right? It's you kind of got to eat shit a little bit. Like, you can beat the piss out of them if you want to, like at the higher levels, but don't get confused of what is tough and what's dirty.
right.
You know?
Yep.
So going around and running someone from behind or punching someone in the face and hiding behind the ref, that's not tough.
Right.
That's pretending.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
go ahead. You jump in.
Yeah. Here's just a couple terms that encompass toughness for me. This is what I would say just from the examples you gave again. So ability to compete, and that's whether you're in a big game or a meaningless game. And this was something that I think my coach used to think about me, which I didn't like, and I didn't get along with my last coach in junior, is I think he thought that about me, that when the games were big, I wasn't as effective.
Really?
Yeah, which was weird because I was always like a pretty good performer, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I normally like turned it on pretty good in the playoffs, but I digress.
Sometimes there's a personality conflict.
Yeah. It was more of that, but I think he thought that about me. That was the vibe that I got from him, which is not a good thing to have. You don't want people to think that you don't compete when it's a tough game. So that's one. Doing the hard things is another one. So this is like shot blocks, hits, stuff like that. Like one of the toughest guys I ever played with, my buddy that climbs trees that I told you about.
Yeah.
One of the toughest guys I've ever played with, and he was 5'8", 5'9", maybe 5'10". Who knows? He wasn't a big guy.
Obviously.
And he was about probably 170 and just peeled to the bone. And one of those guys where you hit him and you feel like you broke your ribs when you hit him. He would always engage first on the hits, which was just made it brutal to play against him. But he played hard in the corners. He played hard, would eat shots, would lay guys out. Never fought. I don't think I ever saw him fight once. You know, so that's another element.
Hard guy to play against.
Yeah, like Patrice Bergeron. Would you say he's not tough because he doesn't ever fight? No, he's nails, man. Yep. He's nails. So that's another one. Basically, the mental side of it, I'm calling that resiliency. So whether that's you get frustrated during the game, your coach yelled at you, whatever mental thing you want to throw in there, that just resiliency, being able to bounce back. That's another element of being tough. Obviously, there's the physical element, which is able to fight, able to hit, and that bit of guys don't want to go against you in the corner because they know it's going to be a battle. Played with a few guys that were like that. Actually, one guy that sticks out in my head, he was a 5th round pick to Sarnia that I played against. And he was one of those guys where it wasn't like he wouldn't come blow you up, but it's just he would just out battle you all over the ice, hard on his stick, like couldn't get him off the puck, like that kind of guy. So there's a bit of that. And then another element of toughness, which you didn't directly mention, was just being disciplined, like being able to follow. Yeah, like being able to follow what you're supposed to be doing, even when you don't want to. And that goes for at the rink and off the ice too. Like being able to keep yourself in order away from the ice, whether it's with training or recovery or nutrition or whatever. That's an element of toughness too. Just a guy that, and everyone respects that guy, the guy that's just dialed in, and you just, no matter where he is, he just has that presence about him, that he's got all his shit together in a line. Like that's a great thing to have. And that's another element of being tough. Then to your last point about the tough versus dirty thing, because I remember this was something I didn't think about too much when I played, but there were guys that I would play with that I would be a little bit scared of because they were dirty, not because they were tough.
Played against or what?
That I played against.
Okay.
So there'd be guys on certain teams where I know if I go in the corner with this guy, I'm not scared of him hitting me.
Anything goes.
I'm scared of him putting his thumb in my eye or whacking me on the back of the knee or stepping on my laces or this kind of shit. Yeah. And those guys, it was never this. It wasn't respect that those guys got.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't want to go near you because you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you shouldn't be on this ice. Like, you shouldn't be out here.
But it's different if that person's dirty but tough and plays.
That's right.
Yeah, like you get a dumb. I can't use the F word.
Yeah.
Close though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You play against a dummy. That's just you're just playing against a dummy.
Well, and those are the guys that
I appreciate a guy. You never like it.
No.
But this is what makes a guy tough. Like if you're going to hit a guy and he gives you an elbow in the chops at the same time, but he's playing hard and he's not backing down when you play against him. I can handle that. Right. That's just part of the deal.
And that's different. That's different, part of the deal. But if you're just the little rat that runs around and you're trying to cross-check guys in the or in the back of the lower back, just above the pants, or you're always looking for that little cheap thing, and then you float away and you shy away in the corners. You don't want to engage ever. You won't fight ever. This kind of guy. Then it's not the same respect in terms of the toughness department with the guys like that. You know, so just that was a good point to end on with that. I wanted to highlight that one again.
I remember playing several guys, but one guy in particular played for the London Knights when I played junior, and he was about 6'3". He looked like actually very, very similar to Corey Perry and similar player.
Oh yeah. And
if you went in a corner with him, he had elbows. You were getting an elbow. And it wasn't, I don't even know if he did it on purpose. It was just like a pain. So this is a toughness thing. A pain in the ass to play against because he was good. Wasn't great. No. He was good. He was actually drafted Pittsburgh. He was good. But it was like, he wasn't like a guy that, when you play against, he looked sloppy, if you know what I mean.
Yep, I know exactly
But you go, every time you go into a battle with him, it was like, you'd have a bloody lip or every single time. And so for me, it was like, okay, you're going back because you've done this 4 times, 5 times, 3 games, 26 times or whatever. It's like the toughest part is keep going back anyways. It's not about having to fight them, but it's also about never just staying your ground.
Yeah.
Because the day that you say, well, I'm not going in there because I don't feel like an elbow in the chops, you're not tough.
Yeah. Well, and this is when you brought up the pain tolerance thing earlier. Yeah. It's like you have to be able to take the hits. You have to be able to take the cheap shots. You have to be able to block the shot off the ankle, even though it sucks. Yeah. And again, this is something for me. Like I am not sitting here saying I did all this stuff when we're talking in the podcast. I vividly remember the first time I flamingoed a shot in junior.
Yeah, but I don't want you to think that that's a bad thing.
No,
it's a natural thing.
This is why I'm bringing this up.
You learn that.
You learn it, right? Yeah. I'm not. This is why I just want it to be clear. Like because I don't like when I'm talking. I know I can come across like I know everything and all that kind of stuff, and I want to make it very clear that that's not how I just get excited when we talk about stuff. Yeah. But it's not like I was doing all this when I was in junior. I vividly remember 16 playing junior, and I flamingoed going out to the point. Yeah. Flamingo meaning I lifted my one leg up because I didn't actually want to block the shot. You know,
or you go in there.
Yeah, pretend with your stick leading and leaning away. Like I remember doing that. I did all that. I remember, and it's
and that's listen, man. Remember Dave Schultz talking about he was considered one of the toughest guys ever to play in the NHL, and that's because he went to the Broad Street Bullies, and it was just fight. It was a tactic, and he said that he never got in a fight before. So you think the first fight he got into, he was like, let's just go? No, he questioned it. He did well, and he kind of got into it. Everyone has to learn. And if anyone, I'm telling you, man, there's guys that were scared and made a decision that they didn't want to make because they were scared. And it hurts. Like the times that I have done that, I'm like, I wish wouldn't have done that. Wish I would have just piss pumped that guy or take my lick in there. Yep. I should have never backed down, or there's times when I was 16 playing against 20, 21-year-old guys in the OHL, and it's like, that corner's like, we'll do a soft chip there. Everyone does it once in a while, but it's learning to get over that and saying, okay, I can't do that again. That doesn't get me anywhere.
That's right.
That's the important part. That's the important part.
And this is why I'm bringing this up. The point of this is that because when you're a kid, you don't know any of this stuff. Like, so I was talking to a kid that I was in here yesterday. It was just him and I working out in his group yesterday. And he was talking to me about blocking shots. and he's a big boy, big tall kid. Like
Yeah.
plays hard. He's the guys that talk about him say he's got a little bit of snap to him and whatever. And he was telling me he's in his draft year. He's like, I love blocking shots.
That's awesome.
And I said to him, I was like, no one ever even told me I should when I was in draft year.
Yeah, that's the goalie's job.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was an important part. So the fact that you already think that and you want to go out there and eat one and you're not scared of taking it off the ankle or taking it in the ribs or whatever, I didn't start to do that until later in junior and then in university when I had my role changed and how I was playing the game. And then it was like all I thought about when I played in junior was just playing hard. Just be hard to play against, get in front of the shots, whatever. But that was until I was 20 plus.
You don't understand that part.
So the reason that I'm saying that it's not like I was doing this all the time is you have to face the fear. And that's part of developing yourself as a player. So when if you're listening to this and you never go block a shot or you get scared of going into the corner with a guy or whatever thing you're missing in the list we just said, it's going to be scary to go and face that. Like it's going to be hard to do and hard to overcome and you just have to go and do it. And guess what? You might actually get hurt. You might actually take a slap shot off the ankle and it might crack your ankle bone. It might happen.
Blocking shots hurt like hell.
It hurts, man.
Those little cross checks across the upper arm.
Yeah.
Hurt like
getting to the front of the net and knowing you're going to take a beating and just taking it. Like these are things that you have to just face and develop as part of your game because you're so much more valuable than the guy that tries to play skill and fades off to the corner when shit gets hard.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to be a constant battle to overcome that stomach feeling of, I know I'm going to take a lick in here and I have to just go do it.
Yeah.
And that's part of hockey. Like it's a tough game. Like you said, you have to go and try to push through those things and develop that part. And then once you start doing it, you realize it's okay. Like the pain, it hurts in the moment for a second, but then it's okay.
Yeah.
And you can go do it again. And you're going to get a bruise on your tricep and you're going to get a bruise on the back of the shin or whatever.
And it may not go away all year.
No.
So going along that, like learning it, okay? So like when people say that they're tough, when you play youth hockey, it's one thing to be a tough player there, like physically tough. It's one thing to do that. But when you go to the next levels, it's a whole different ballgame. Because so I was telling this to Charlie when he was getting drafted because he's a tough kid. He's a tough kid. I said, yeah, just don't think you're too tough. Like you're gonna have to learn something.
That's important.
Yeah, don't think you're too tough because I can't explain to you, son, how different it is when you take the shield off and you're wearing a visor only, and you're a bigger kid for your age, but you're gonna be playing guys 4 and 5 years older than you that are bigger than you, that are they're basically men.
Yeah, a little bit of grizzle.
And they've been doing this job. You're like playing this role for 4 or 5 years. So there's and they got a full mustache and they forgot to shave. That's why, full beard that day. Like, there's guys in the league. It's hilarious. You see them in warm up and they're clean shaven. They come out third period and they got look like Grizzly Adams, like Johnny Tuckaluck, Tommy Tuckaluck. Sorry, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're men, so it's like just the appearance of it can scare the shit out of you.
Yep.
So going against these guys over and over is a decision. And I think I've said this before, but I remember my first year. It was a month. For 1 month straight, I had to make a decision. I'd be fired up to go play, and I remember our first game at home was against the Windsor Spitfires, and I was looking. I'm going, what the heck? Like, how can there be a 6'7", like a 6'6"? His name was Sean Whalen. My first face-off in the OHL, he was 6'7", 19 years old. I'm 16. He was drafted to, I forgot. And face-off there, and I go, okay. The D, Glenn Featherstone, 6'3". Mark Kozowski, 6'3". Paul Maurice, 6'3". And it just went on and on, these big, huge D. So you're sitting there going, like, it's not like, I'm tough, look at me. I'm 5'10".
Yeah, that's right.
16. So, you're playing hard, and after the whistle, there's a scrum, you get right in the head, right? And you're like, okay, that didn't happen in youth hockey, right? But then you're going down the ice. So this is the big thing is I have the puck. Like, I'm a very skilled player, right? And they close gas real good. So I remember in slow motion, I can picture exactly. I can probably tell you what fans are there. I'm going on my weak side wing against Glenn Featherstone, and I'm coming in with speed, and he's closing the gap. And I said to myself, "You want to do this?" So I did a soft chip, and I went full tilt, and he just he hit me, but I slid through. Got the puck, finished my shift, and I went, okay, I did that. And I had to do that for almost 1 month. Are you going to do this? We'd go play. Remember, our second home game was against Guelph, and there's this guy, Tom Nicolau. I'm like, you're allowed to be that big.
Yeah.
Full stash, bad haircut, schnoz out to here. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell? You got guys that look like they did a 100-meter dash in an 80-meter gym.
Yeah.
They've been like, it's intimidating. So my son saw that. He goes, Dad, every day I gotta, like in the beginning, he goes, that guy's, he's nuts. I go, he's nuts for now. You'll get it. So you learn. That's the point.
Well, to the point of the danger of thinking you're too tough.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys will go through this too. You start to swing from the not tough at all to a little bit too confident. Yeah. And my favorite story about myself of just talk about getting a humble pie. Yeah. When I started playing junior, I had a couple fights in camps first, and then into my first year, I had a few fights, and I did really well with my fights. Yeah. So I thought I was like super tough, and I didn't fight anyone tough, but I thought I was tough.
Yeah.
So I remember 16, there was some kind of scrum or whatever, and I gave a guy a cheap shot, and I remember he's a big 6'3" D, same things, squirrel on the back of his neck, hair, mustache, big head like this. Yeah. Next game, I gave him the shot, and his eye just popped out, like just so stupid, dirty idiot. Yeah. And I thought I was fine. I was like, yeah, come, you want a piece? For sure. So the next game, he called me out and absolutely tuned me.
Punched your head right off your shoulders.
Like if I didn't have my helmet on, he would have broke my face for sure. Yeah. He punched me 48 times. I don't think I threw a punch. Yeah. I could barely hang on. Yeah. And this guy just had those big, wide hands, knuckles.
Frozen turkeys.
Oh man. And just was feeding me, and I was just holding on for dear life. And so I remember I got kicked out of that game, and I remember sitting at the glass watching the rest of the game, and I was just thinking exactly that. If I didn't have my helmet on, that guy would have probably broke my orbital bone. Yeah. And there was my, okay, how about we relax and keep in perspective what being tough is. Yeah. And this was when I started to, what we're talking about, develop some of these characteristics of what toughness actually is. Yeah. Because if you go in there with too much confidence, there's always somebody bigger, always somebody tougher, always somebody that's going to feed you one. And especially for me, it's like, I'm not the biggest guy ever. And there's a difference. Like,
it'll shock you who's going to beat the piss out of you.
Yeah, that's right. It'll shock you. Yeah. Guys, you don't think, man.
You fight, or you go in the corner. I don't have to say fight. You can go in a corner with somebody, right? And he's 5'8", shredded, looks like he's put together with steel. Right, and he puts his body into you and lays you out, or he comes up, he does grab you with his short little arms and pulls you in and knocks you one on the chin. Yeah, and he's strong. Yeah, you can bench press 300 pounds.
He's controlling you.
5'8" bench press 300 pounds, and he's controlling you. Go, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, that's right. Man.
Those are even scarier.
Yeah,
yeah. So I want to finish on like 3 aspects of toughness, because I want the kids to understand and parents to understand, because you can always work through this together. There's physical, mental, and emotional. And I think. I was confused. Me and Eric Wellwood had a good talk about emotional toughness, and I like that a lot. Okay, so the physical toughness is like you're going to just battle over and 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 over. You're going to tolerate pain. You're going to do the things that you battle, and there's a mental toughness that comes with that. But you battle. Who I like to think of, like a real good example, is when people think of tough, you think big mustache. Whatever. Why a mustache?
Always a mustache.
Well, the mustache is
just alpha.
Yeah. Well, actually, the guy I'm going to say does have a mustache, ironically, but you just think like hairy. Like it doesn't have to be hairy.
Big
like,
chiseled
could
jaw.
Be bald. Yeah. But the guy that I really think is super tough, is Brendan Gallagher from Montreal. I think he's 5'9", 5'8".
No, I can fight. Keep talking.
He will fight. He will go into every battle, every scrum, and he get his teeth knocked out. He'll block shots. He does everything that you're supposed to do, and he's a great hockey player, right? So what tells me that he's extremely tough and mentally tough and emotional tough to go with that is that he's 5'8". He had to, he's not supposed to be a tough kid.
Yeah, 5'9", 184.
5'9", 184.
That's little.
That kid battles, man. Well, I forget what he's making. I think $7, $8 million, $10 million a year. Unreal. You know what else I think is really tough? is Sidney Crosby. And people go, oh, he's a whiner. No, man.
Yeah.
This guy battles and battles and battles, and look beyond fighting. And he's gotten a couple, but look beyond the fighting. He goes into corners, he hits, he takes a beating, he he wins battles, he fights for every inch. But I think more importantly is like he's playing against top dogs every night. He's under the microscope, and there's pressure, which is mental toughness. You don't feel the pressure, but it's coming from him all the time. You're the best in the world and all this kind of shit. He is tough. And then I just wanted to say, Mike Weber that I trained, like, wasn't a fighting tough, but he ate shots, man. Blocked shots,
Wow.
played that hard game, worked his ass off. And where I'm going to say he was mentally tough is that he came from Pittsburgh, didn't have a hockey family whatsoever. He just knew how he had to work, and he dialed his brain in that he wanted to play in the NHL. And you can never outwork this guy. There's no chance you're outworking him. It's just not going to happen. And he fought for everything he got in the NHL, and he coaches now. But there's a mental toughness that he had that he wouldn't be denied. So that's one. Braden McNabb that plays in the NHL, no one really knows who he is. Maybe you do. But I checked yesterday, he's leading the league after 50-some games with 137 block shots. Those are block shots from the National Hockey Leaguers. That means he's standing in front of pucks, man. That's tough. He's doing it over and over. That's a different type of tough than
Victor Hedman shot.
Victor Hedman shot. Yeah. Like, seriously, right? Or Shea Weber, right? And then just on Charlie's team, Ashton Reeser. Did I mention him earlier? Yeah. It's like, I've been really watching his game because that's not the guy that stands out, except for that he's really, really big, because he's not carrying the puck down the ice and doing all kinds of stuff. But this, like Charlie talks about, he goes, Dad, I love this guy. He goes, like, I love him. He goes, he eats 5-6 pucks a game, blocking shots off it, and he just, nothing to it. Huge man. And when you go near him, it's contact all the time. It's not like he's blowing. He does, but it's not like he's open ice hitting and like the real highlight type of hits. But it's just a constant. We're leaning on guys, just taking that big body and leaning and
always
leaning.
there.
It's just, pucks out and competes. And there's something to it, and I absolutely love it. There's Benny McFarland on Charlie's team, who's
favorite,
5'8", 5'7", probably 180. Like, he's pretty jacked. This guy competes, man.
He's not hits anyone, everything, no matter what.
Everyone, everything, goes into the corners, battle, and he's getting rewarded by getting some goals, right? And again, there's a good physical tough, mental tough, because when you're on the smaller end, you have to believe that you're not small, right?
Yep.
And then their captain, Braden Guy, it's like he's an overager, and I just love his game because he does it all. Like, he will fight. And he doesn't have to, but he will, because he knows that's what the team needs. He's a leader, so that's another strength, right? Like, the mental toughness to have guys follow. Like, he's a true leader. Like, you just see it, and he just plays a tough game. Finishes his hits. Battle. He got a couple goals in the last couple games by getting to the front of the net and he's off his stick. Tips, right? It's a beautiful thing to see. So I really, really appreciate guys that have that whole toughness. It's not just about throwing hands all the time, right? So, do you have anything to add to that right
Nope.
now? Okay. The next thing is mentally tough. I don't believe that you can be physically tough as a hockey player, like, to go through the battle over and over, and everything that's involved in hockey without being mentally tough. I don't think. Well, it's not possible. Okay, you can't just be a physically tough guy because there's too many emotions and stuff like that. What does mentally tough mean? It means I have the ability to stay in the moment. That's basically what it means. It means, and we said it 100 times before, what happened behind 2 seconds ago and what's going to happen 2 seconds from now is not important. It's, I can stay in the moment. I can get the task at hand. So you don't let anything else really penetrate your head. You have the ability to stay in the moment. The other thing I think mentally toughness means is that you have to be able to perform under pressure. So like I said earlier, if you're a player that plays against the guys that you know you can beat, or the easy games and the easy battles, and those are the ones that you like. But when the pressure is on and you're playing against guys that are, that's the actual battle, then, and you don't perform, then you can't perform under pressure. You're not mentally tough at all. You're picking and choosing your battles. I think a mentally tough person is willing to learn, You know what I mean? Like willing to take advice and willing to to improve.
Yeah, it's
And
criticism
that's
stuff.
very, very, very important in the game of hockey, and adjust. And then I think a mentally person also doesn't make things bigger than what they are. So that's where I think a lot of the times, if you think about it from a physical standpoint, if you're bigger than me, better than me and stuff, I can't make that a bigger challenge than what it is. I just have to play you. I have to play you hard consistently like I would anybody else.
A positive and negative too, right?
Yeah, positive
Either
and
way.
negative. Yeah. Like it's just you do your job, right? So you stay in the moment, and so that's what I think mentally tough is. A lot of people think mentally tough is like the raw
Motivational speech.
motivational stuff. That's not what it is. It's very, very simple stuff. Stay in the moment, perform under pressure, and face fears and all that kind of stuff. Um, the one that I find very interesting on a toughness standpoint is emotional toughness. And Eric Wellwood and I were talking about it like for hours. And I actually called him yesterday, but he didn't get back to me. So whatever, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Welly. Because I wanted to get his input on this because he has a really interesting perspective on it. And I think it might even be more important than mental toughness. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't know what I mean? Frustration. Do you get frustrated? Like what gets you frustrated? Right? So those are emotions. Like if you can keep your frustrations, I mean, if you go back to mental toughness, you can say, well, if you stay in the moment, you shouldn't get frustrated. That's true. But that's one thing I thought of. Getting too high or too low, how you respond when you hear a coach or fans or something like that, press, like does that get you down? Does that take you off your game? Does that give you not take away a night's sleep from you? Are you emotionally drained and you're thinking like, what did I do wrong? Or hope the coach doesn't hate me. Like it's a different thing. And you got to be able to keep your cool. Like, if someone says something or does something to you, or the game's getting away, like you're not slamming your stick and letting your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah, well, I feel like emotional toughness is still under the umbrella of mental toughness, but
100%.
But I think it's worth its own discussion,
it's
right?
a branch.
Because it's not just when the things you pointed out with mental toughness, like being able to stay in the moment and not thinking too much of the past, not thinking too much of the future, and that kind of stuff. That's just generally true, but there's a lot more to it when you start to bring in emotions.
Yeah.
Right. So it's easy to say, like when you're sitting on a pillow at home meditating, it's a lot easier to stay in the moment and whatever. But when there's a lot of different stimulus being thrown at you, it's worth its own discussion because it comes down to mentally, how can you handle things? That's what emotional toughness, it still is a branch of that. But when you have certain things happening in the game, whether it's someone hurts your feelings or someone's breaking your spirit or whatever the situation is because of what's happening in the game, you get scratched. Your coach,
him and not me?
Yeah, your coach says one thing but means another.
That's the emotions. Now you're hurting me.
And that's takes a different set of skills than just saying mental toughness, stay in the moment. It brings a whole other slew of elements. Like how do you handle that? And for me, the emotional toughness piece, I'll let you get back to it in a second, but the emotional toughness piece is, again, it comes down to your ability to separate out, how you said, the tone from the message kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to separate that out. And one way that from The Power of Now, which is one book that I read, and another one was listening to Jordan Peterson talk about it, is one strategy for this is being able to separate yourself where you can observe the things that are happening to you. Detaching is, and so there's the you that hears what's happening, and then there's the you that's kind of just silently judging.
It's a great tool, man.
Yeah, that's silently judging. So it's like, which part of it is you? And some people phrase it as the ego, and whatever. So
id.
The id, the ego part of you that just is taking things, and you have that impulsive emotional response. You got to have the wise owl in the back that's just kind of objectively watching and saying, okay, this is important from that piece, but we'll get rid of that emotion. This is the important message from this piece, but we'll get rid of that emotion. And being able to keep yourself level and having good perspective on things, that is where the emotional piece comes in, because there's going to be like super, super highs, super, super lows, frustration, hatred, anger, all those things are going to happen through the game, and they can totally derail you if you're not able to deal with those different emotions that happen,
Oh, it's so huge. Like the easiest ones for me to pick up, because there's so many, but it's like, if you got scratched from a game, like that can sit with you. That can really sit with you, and you could say, well, maybe the coach doesn't like me. Maybe but I thought I played good, right? So emotionally, you could be like drained, and then if you let that linger, then it won't be any good. Or you could take it the opposite way and think you had a great game, or someone tells you how great you are, and you actually start believing your emotions, and you're thinking you're something you're not, which not is not necessarily bad all the time, but when you come down, that's the thing. You
Yeah.
want to be even keeled. Like emotions are, like the dressing room stuff. It's how people treat you. It's why does that guy keep getting a chance and I don't? Or someone's not you put someone is not getting a chance and you love it,
Yeah.
you want to get everything for yourself for sure, but it's like when you feed off of that, or you actually want to put the guy down or whatever. It's like those are things that you need to get rid of, right?
Yeah. And the reason that it's an issue is it's very energy intensive to be very emotional, and it's extremely stressful, especially with negative emotions, right? Positive emotions, the stress aspect isn't so much. It still takes a lot of energy, but the negative emotion stuff, where you're in like a mental conflict, it's very, very, very stressful, and it can actually start to take away from your physically from what's going on, right? You can actually, like, if you're super stressed, like, your health markers will go out of whack for sure for a period of time. So if you're one of those people that gets wrapped up in little things that aren't necessarily important, or maybe you don't fully understand it, like your coach scratching you, there's a good example of something you just don't understand. You don't know why they're doing what they're doing because they got 25, 27 guys that they're dealing with. That's something that it can hang on you, and it can get heavy, and it can start to spiral and have that feedback loop where it just gets worse and worse because you're letting yourself be wrapped up in it, and you can't do that separation to move on. And that's why it can be so difficult, because it's so stressful to deal with when it's something that you let take hold of you and you can't get rid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think one of the best examples, and this is what I'm going to leave it on when we talk about working out, is working out. Like when you make a decision, when you say, okay, I'm going to be a fit person, I'm going to work out every day or 5 days a week. All right. If you're making an emotional decision, then when you wake up on Monday morning, the night before you went to bed with emotions like, I can't wait, I'm going to work out, I'm going to feel good, it's going to be awesome, can't wait, I'm going to get jacked this week, awesome. And then you get up on Monday morning and you just, I don't know, I don't really feel like it. You don't feel like it as an emotion, but that your emotion doesn't have to have any influence on whether you work out or not anyways.
No factor.
It's a no factor. So if you get rid of that emotion that you don't feel like it and you just do it anyways, then you're in control of your emotions, because your emotions will take you up and it'll take you down, and it'll derail you so fast, because it's even eating, right? I don't feel like having a salad and chicken tonight. I'd rather have whatever. I don't know what people eat, so we eat whatever it is. But those are emotional things. It's eating again is like when we're feeling sad, or we're feeling, there's certain emotions that will trigger eating or drinking or doing habits that maybe aren't good for you.
Yeah.
So if you can understand your emotions and, like you say, you detach yourself, you'd be in a lot better control of your life as a hockey player and then as a human being.
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure.
That's all I really got.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we'll leave it at that. If anybody has any follow-up questions on that, write us in, and we'll see you guys next week, or talk to you next week. Or I'm not really going to see anyone. But
when we do this, we don't see them because the camera's coming this way.
Yeah, that's right.
But if we're reverse,
we're
going to talk.
Yeah, you guys will see us next week.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, yeah.
Okay. See you guys.